Oh, thank you. And I think we can go on tour. I got that.
I can take us on a tour.
Great.
Since people are gathering
Yeah, I
there.
didn't need. I just did the HDMI directly.
Perfect. All right.
Hi there, Dan.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Great shirt.
Keep going.
Oh, good.
I think this is the one on Copenhagen.
Did you? Oh, fantastic.
And that's I went to school to go to my everything, and that's why I decided to go to here. So it's now not difficult.
Well, I want to hear also. I'll be back. Yes.
Really? Oh. What nice.
Um, okay, I'm going to go ahead and.
If you're comfortable without it,
I think I'm probably good without. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dan Kahn. I'm the executive director of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the organization that hosts Kubernetes and also helps organize these meetups. We are holding our event, KubeCon Cloud Native Con, in San Diego in 3 weeks. And if you don't mind, I was actually going to give you a sneak peek of what I'm going to be talking about and give you an advanced look at that keynote. And it also lets me practice. And so conveniently, I'm going to do 2 short presentations, but let me, so just pretend it's 3 weeks from now, you're in San Diego, California, and although this is a good turnout, imagine 12,000 people. And instead of that screen, imagine 6 meters high, and 60 meters wide. And okay, so I come up and I say, good morning, San Diego. The Cloud Native Computing, yeah, thank you. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation is the organization that hosts these open source projects and organizes this event. We also publish the Cloud Native definition. Quote, one of CNCF's goals is to democratize state-of-the-art patterns to make innovations accessible for everyone. In order to share with you a short parable about this democratization, I need to introduce my family. We live in New York City, where my wife, Julie, is a climate scientist. She couldn't be here this week, but her climate change forecasting startup, Jupiter Intelligence, uses Kubernetes. This is our younger son, Ellis, who's 10 and throws a solid fastball. Our older son, Adam, just became a teenager. And this is our cat, Chorus. When Adam was a 7-year-old second grader, a bunch of his friends started playing Minecraft. So I installed it on his iPad, and a week later, I found Adam sitting on the couch, but with an iPad screen instead of books, and no little brother, and with a frightened expression like this. But the strange part was that his iPad screen was black. Why are you staring at a black screen? I asked. I'm hiding from the zombies, he replied. I don't see any zombies, I said. The zombies come out when the sun sets, he explained. The screen is black, he said, because I'm hiding in a hole in a hill. You see, Minecraft might look like this during the day, but at night, the zombies come out. And my second grader had not yet learned any of the ways that he might defeat zombies. But he had figured out that he could dig a hole with his hands and close it in around himself until the screen went black. This story is a metaphor. The second grader represents most enterprises. Although Kubernetes crossed the chasm last year, the majority of all enterprises are still not cloud native. Zombies represent software failures, specifically anything that can cause downtime. Hiding in a hole represents precautionary software practices, such as long release cycles, infrequent dependency updates, and manual quality assurance. I want to emphasize that for both second graders and for most enterprises, they are not acting irrationally. The zombies are real. Precautionary practices are a reasonable response. I also want to make clear that in comparing enterprises to second graders, I'm not exempting my own organization. CNCF is part of the Linux Foundation. We host software including Linux, Node.js, and Let's Encrypt. And yet projects we've undertaken, like an open source CLA bot, have been delayed. The solution for my second grader, Adam, was to arrange for the older sibling of a classmate to come over, a fourth grader. And the fourth grader taught us about crafting tables. You know how when you combine software development with information technology operations, you get DevOps? Similarly, Minecraft consists of mining and crafting. And my second grader had figured out how to craft all on his own, or at least how to dig with his arms. But he didn't know how to craft. And crafting is critical to the whole game. Let's take a look at a simple crafting example. Take a pumpkin, some sugar, and an egg, and use your crafting table to combine them into a pumpkin pie. Yummy, but not so useful. So let's do a more complex example that will help us stop zombies. Chop a tree to get wood, which you form into wood planks and then use to make a stick. Kill a spider using a bow and arrow to get some string. Now dig in gravel to find flint, and kill a chicken to get a feather. And finally, combine these using a crafting table to create a bow and some arrows, as long as you ignore the circular dependency error. The lesson of Minecraft is that you can take simple things and combine them together into more complex things to build very powerful tools. And here at KubeCon Cloud NativeCon, we're doing the same thing. As you probably know, Kubernetes uses the firewall technology IP tables to manage networking connections between pods. IP tables depends, of course, on Linux, and specifically the networking subsystem. The first Linux firewall, IPFW, originated from BSD. It was soon replaced with IPFW ADM, the Internet Protocol Firewall Administrator, which was more complete and easier to use. This was re-implemented as IP chains, which was then superseded by IP tables as part of the NetFilter system. It is now being re-implemented using eBPF, the Extended Berkeley Packet Filter, which has an awesome logo. So, firewalls are a core building block of Kubernetes that have been crafted into more advanced forms over time. But so are C groups and the domain name system and the RAF distributed consensus algorithm implemented in etcd. In fact, Kubernetes consists of hundreds of foundational technologies that have been combined together. But I would go a step further and argue that Kubernetes itself is like a crafting table. It is a kind of alchemy that turns simpler things into more powerful ones. Kubernetes, in short, is like Minecraft. You have all the tools you need to build what you want, and even tools to build new tools. But what we construct is up to us. Finally, where do the fourth graders and the second graders come together to share their crafting formulas? The answer is KubeCon. Please raise your hand now if this is the first KubeCon you've ever attended. You are the metaphorical second graders. And what's the benefit for fourth graders? There are two. First, after we got educated about crafting, my son Adam gave the fourth grader a cookie. No, I mean a cookie. The metaphorical fourth graders in the audience who are able to provide assistance to those second graders may find that they are showered with cookies and, job offers. And the second and even more important reason is that those second graders will soon enough become fourth graders. And our community, where democratization is a core value, is eagerly looking for people who can contribute new and improved crafting ideas. Kubernetes is only 5 years old, which means that we are all still in elementary school. I look forward to seeing what we will teach each other. Thank you very much. Okay, before we go on, anyone ever seen 190 slides in 7 minutes before? So that's a lot of slides. It is a style that is a lot of fun. It was invented by a Harvard professor named Larry Lessig, but I've enjoyed it. Just takes a long time to put together 190 slides is the only problem. Okay, and so great. You have this. Okay. So now I'm going to do one more. This one is the talk that I gave at KubeCon Barcelona. I know you were in Copenhagen. Did anyone get to go to Barcelona? Yeah? Did you come to my opening keynote? Yeah? No? You? It's okay if you were off somewhere else. Well, I get it. But, okay, so this is one more video game analogy. So we'll go again. Good morning. I'm Dan Kahn, Executive Director of CNCF, the nonprofit organization that hosts these open source projects and organizes this event. Here's a picture of our much smaller conference 2 years ago in Berlin. Let's zoom in on the graffiti. Orchestration, containerization, microservices. Our shorthand for explaining cloud native. Last year, our technical oversight committee came up with a much more expansive characterization, the CNCF Cloud Native Definition version 1.0. It includes ideas like declarative APIs, resiliency, observability, an ecosystem of open source vendor neutral projects. One word that's not included in the definition is Kubernetes. That's because Kubernetes is a leading cloud native implementation, but certainly not the only one. So why are we at KubeCon and not a conference about a different cloud native platform? Or more succinctly, why Kubernetes? Let's travel back in time a bit to look at the question of why certain technologies win out. Anyone familiar with Back to the Future?
Yes.
Okay. We'll start in the year 2004. A social networking entrepreneur met with a number of Silicon Valley investors, including Napster founder Sean Parker. The founder dropped out of his Ivy League school and then extended the social network to many other campuses, building the site to hundreds of thousands of users. I'm talking, of course, about Campus Network, started at Columbia University by Adam Goldberg a month before Mark Zuckerberg launched the Facebook at Harvard. So why were these two incredibly similar sites both developed at essentially the same time? I found my answer playing a game. How many of you have ever played Sid Meier's Civilization? No? Really? Okay, I just gave this talk in Europe, and it was super popular. Okay. Anyway, Civ 6 was my 12-year-old's favorite game before he got back into Minecraft. One of Sid Meier's greatest innovations was to explicitly map out a technology tree. If you want to add knights as a warrior for your civilization, you need to first develop the stirrup to domesticate horses and metalworking to create armor. The development of new technologies depends on the availability and sometimes the ubiquity of other technologies. Both Campus Network and the Facebook depended on personal computers and the internet being available in dorm rooms, as well as a whole set of other technologies, such as algorithms for efficient graph traversal. And this process of simultaneous invention is something that we see throughout history. Let's go back further in time to 1858. This is a picture of the British naturalist who collected beetles and spent his formative years as a scientist documenting the natural history of Wales. He went on a multi-year expedition in the mid-1800s to collect specimens. After reading a book on population growth by Thomas Malthus, he formulated the theory of evolution. I'm not speaking of Charles Darwin, another British naturalist who collected beetles, studied Welsh natural history, went on a multi-year expedition, and 11 years earlier, after reading the same book by Malthus, discovered evolution. No, the man on the left is Alfred Russel Wallace, and history knows him as the other person who discovered evolution. Quote, the centrifugal governor of the steam engine checks and corrects any irregularities almost before they become evident, and in like manner, no deficiency in the animal kingdom can ever reach any magnitude. That's Wallace describing control theory, which is central to how both evolution and Kubernetes work. We can go back further to 1687 and see Gottfried Leibniz and Isaac Newton independently discovering the calculus. And finally, we have John Tyndall. He's often credited with first establishing in 1859 that carbon dioxide is the greenhouse gas that leads to climate change. Standing in for Eunice Newton Foote, we have the cover of her scientific paper. She made and published the greenhouse gas discovery 3 years earlier. Despite her prior publication and also being a signatory at Seneca Falls, the first women's rights convention, no image of Foote has been found, and her discovery was not credited until 2010. Simultaneous invention is the concept that certain ideas are in the air. The prerequisite inventions have been made, and now it just takes a spark of creativity and a lot of effort to build the next step in the technology tree. Simultaneous invention is a common occurrence through history. So now let's return to this decade in the cloud native definition. A number of companies have faced the challenge of building and running applications at scale. And with the prerequisite technologies having become available, including the internet and Linux, a Cambrian explosion of container orchestrators was created. These systems, each of which follow the cloud native definition, enabled these companies to reach web scale with fewer servers and fewer staff than would have been possible before. They include Alibaba Sigma, Amazon Apollo, Apache Mesos, Baidu Matrix, Cloud Foundry Garden and Diego, CoreOS Fleet, Docker Swarm, Facebook Tupperware, and finally, Google, Borg, and Omega. No, just kidding, we're only halfway through. There's also HashiCorp Nomad, IBM Platform Symphony, Joint Triton, Lyft v3 Infra, Microsoft Service Fabric, Netflix Titus, Rancher Cattle, Red Hat OpenShift v2 Broker, Spotify Helios, Tencent Gaia, Twitter Aurora, and Uber Peloton. So, how are all of these organizations able to develop similar approaches to their scaling challenges? You could say that the prerequisite technologies were in the air. As Isaac Newton wrote, we stand on the shoulders of giants, which is what Newton was doing when he adapted that saying from Bernard de Chartres, which is what I am doing in that I reused those two quotes from the fantastic video essay, Everything is a Remix. But now, let's return firmly to the present. We're here at KubeCon Cloud Native Con Barcelona. Many other technologies had to be developed before Cloud Native could emerge. But why aren't we at HeliosCon or MatrixCon or ApolloCon? These are the results of web searches on some of the open source cloud native offerings over the last 3 years. What is responsible for Kubernetes' extraordinary growth? Let's finally try to answer the earlier question, why Kubernetes? In my view, there are 3 main reasons. Number 1, it works really well. Kubernetes was not just built on a decade of learning within Google from Borg and Omega, but has now also incorporated key architectural ideas from Red Hat, Huawei, and dozens of other companies. Number 2, vendor-neutral open source. Enterprises that are going to build on top of a platform want to see multiple companies backing a technology so they're not locked into a single vendor. No one wants to have to pay a platform tax for the lifetime of their application. From the beginning, Google explicitly encouraged developers from other companies to take leadership roles. In fact, CNCF was created within the Linux Foundation to provide a neutral home for cloud-native technologies, and has worked through programs like Certified Kubernetes to ensure that the ecosystem does not fragment. Number 3, it's the people. Kubernetes, like Soylent Green, is people. Anyone seen Soylent Green? Small joke there. The project has been developed by an extraordinary group of contributors, has done an impressive job of onboarding new users, what's been called the time to first serotonin, and has explicitly worked to narrow the distance between the steps of the contributor ladder, from user to contributor to reviewer to leader. So these are my ideas on the 3 reasons for success, but I'd love to hear yours, either in person here or on Twitter. And the thought I want to leave you with is how deliberate all 3 elements of Kubernetes success have been. To quote the climate writer David Roberts, stitching things together, building up institutions that work, figuring out how to keep diverse interests on the same page is difficult emotionally and intellectually. The magic of the technology tree is that we can only be here because our predecessors have developed extraordinary innovations like Linux and TCP/IP, and in a bigger sense, evolution, the calculus, and the cause of climate change. And the work that we're doing together, building on top of the shoulders of giants, may be neither swift nor easy, but is also laying the foundations of the next generation of innovations, which are even now being built on top of Kubernetes. We, all of us, are part of the cloud native community. I entreat us to collaborate together in a spirit of kindness and with an awareness of history this week and in hereafter. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and hand it off to hear about the CKA, but then I'd love to come back afterwards and answer some questions and chat. So thank you very much for letting me present this. Yeah, appreciate the invitation. I'll just... You want the VGA? You reach your mic.
5 minutes back. So we can break.
Okay, so do you like to take those and drink some coffees and juice?
Yeah, thank you.
Please feel comfortable to drink any juice or coffee or water.
الحمد لله تنزل نحن نستمتع باللحظات الأخيرة. الحمد لله وين السنة ماله على سعيد غادي كل شيء هو شكون قريب معايا ما عادش مش
Hi, this is Dan. Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. You apply to you just get access to the package. And great. You just start your career. The bachelor recovery. Yeah. Right. Okay. But I'm so glad I said yes. Yeah, I'm so glad. You yeah. Everything is routed via IP, but you can configure the switches. So it's a much more advanced. It's a paid system. It's not too late. If you were the other team, what if you could change the because they're very happy with other you just need to explain why. Do you work with this?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, right.
Right. And how did you hear about this? Yeah, that's great. It's still a lot of money, but it's still, yeah. No, it's chaos. So but we were trying to figure out what to do for screening that, but hopefully in another couple months we'll be out. And so we might also be doing the meetups of saying for people who are active, or maybe asking people to evade something like that. So we'll see, but I think that the certified coordination is to be very helpful for getting a job, including a job here. We're also going to be launching a job free website where you can see jobs and apply for yeah, I'm pretty optimistic for it. I mean, I think there's a lot of innovation occurring. Things like TV, most service software, that a lot of people are playing. Somehow, oh, with this.
Who else is going to go for friends? You're a startup. You're here. That's great. That is great. We need more than that. More of that. Are you taking a profit?
Yeah.
You want to take a profit?
You want to stand up? Informal.
Come on and kiss you. Good.
شوية ما كانت واحد
Sure. So we can show that link to you where I can point it out. At the end, we can love to apply to that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, so the other thing you could consider is submitting describing your experience. And if you can how you got stuff, the problems you ran into, how you got that. We also offer travel. So that's what I was yeah. Now, my last comment, although it's really good for next area is to try Kubernetes on bare metal without a stack. And so there's a installer called Spray that allows you to put it directly to bare Great. Yeah, but you should try it without the But that's great. Congratulations again. So we'll, and then you and I can both chat at the end. I mean,
Okay. Hello, everyone. I would like first to thank you all for being part of this meetup. Thank you also for Vistaprint to have us here and to sponsor this meetup with all of this. Thank you also to Dan and his wife Julie for being our guests here. So the slides will be about how to contribute to Kubernetes. it will be non-technically discussion. I will try to make it interactive as much as I can. Okay, so who am I? I'm a former senior DevOps engineer at Vistaprint. I'm an open source contributor. I have been contributing to Ubuntu, Kubernetes, and many other open source projects. My personal website is enzoid.com. You can find their article. I hope that they will be useful. You can find me on GitHub and Twitter. Okay, so the question here is contributing to Kubernetes is. You think it's hard, easy, intimidating? What do you think?
Intimidating.
Okay, intimidating. What else? As far as I can remember, there are contributors here. There are Samah and Shihab. Of course, Dan, yeah. So, contributing to Kubernetes is scary, is intimidating, and hard. That's true, right? Okay, so in every open source community or an open source project, it doesn't have to be. It should be, or the question is, how can we make it easier? What do you think? The first steps are how to go from a grumpy, angry cat to a pleased, cute cat. So let's dive in. Generally in Kubernetes, as a community, we have community groups. They are divided in many SIGs, which are special interest groups. These SIGs are the people who own codes and consist of sub-projects. Sub-projects could be like working groups, user groups. Working groups are temporary across SIGs. That means that there are, for example, there is Kubernetes Infra, which is a working group. They are working on the infrastructure of Kubernetes, the CI/CD behind. And it's basically temporary because it's not the main reason for being Kubernetes or being as the project it is. So for users groups, they are generally for facilitating communication for long-standing topics for users. There are many examples. I think there is user group usability. It's like for making Kubernetes more usable for its users and for its contributors. We have also committees, which are the group to take on sensitive topics. This is like the figure that exists in the community repo in the GitHub. I will not dive in. There are like the architecture of Kubernetes, including the working group, SIGs, like for example, SIG CLI, which is responsible for kubectl, also for the SIG API machinery, and etc. Okay. Why Kubernetes as a project is divided into SIGs? You should like pick a SIG, which is obviously could be related to your job. For example, the DevOps engineer could be involved into Kubernetes with working groups like Kubernetes Infra, as I said. Developers also. Shihab, I think, is JavaScript developer, and he helped with the Kubernetes dashboard. So it's related to your job to pick up SIG. Also, it's related to your interest. If you would like to contribute in the CLI, the API machinery, and every SIG or every working group has its own documentation, which is the next point. Also, there are many contributors or newcomers. They are picking SIGs based on their documentation. I'm not saying here that SIGs have that. I'm not saying that there are SIGs that doesn't have a clear documentation. Each SIG have a clear documentation, but it's up to you. Also, which SIGs have clear role defined. Like for example, the seed release. This special interest group of release is like having specific roles. We'll get through these roles next. Also, the language you are comfortable with. By language, I'm talking about programming language. You could like contribute using Go, using C, even with Python. There is like client for Kubernetes by Python. Then when you choose or pick seed, you should like get involved by knowing them, whether using their Slack channels, mailing lists, meetings, or even meeting notes. All this information are available publicly. The Slack channels, there is like slack.kubernetes k8s.io. Mailing lists are basically Google groups. So when you are in the Slack, you will see a lot of emojis. We love using emojis. That's for example for Jeff announcing the Kubernetes security announcement. You can see all the emojis there. So the first thing is like to start lurking around. What does that mean? It's like it's fine to feel intimidated. It's fine to start small. You just need to get an idea of who is working on what and what tasks are being worked on and what's on the roadmap. That's all included on the meetings and meetings node. Kubernetes uses Zoom for its video conference calls. People there are too friendly. As you can see in the photo, they are wearing weird hats. This is, I think, for Seed Contribex. Seed Contribex, by the way, is a special interest group for contributor experience. Okay, so when you have chosen a SIG or working group or any area that you want to get involved in and start contributing, you may start to bring up your local environment. There are many steps. The easy one is to run bash script, which is under hack/local cluster.sh. More details can be found in this link. I will share this presentation in GitHub. By the way, it's inspired by Nikita. Nikita, thank you. I think she's already watching. Okay. There are also many ways to bring up your Kubernetes cluster. You could use Kind, which is Kubernetes and Docker. You could use any other like Minikube for testing or even kubadl. It's up to you. Okay. So next, you may want to know the concept behind each feature in Kubernetes. All of that is available under kubernetes.io. Category is concepts. Docs are practically divided into two categories: developer guide and contributor guide. The developer guide is for code convention. It's like the real code base of Kubernetes. One contributor guide is for the community. That means, for example, in the community, we have the contributor ladder, which is being member, then approver, then owner, etc. I will go also through that in the next slides. So you could find these two categories in the community repo. When I say contributor community repo, it's under Kubernetes/community. For docs, we have also concept, which is KEP, Kubernetes Enhancement Proposals. Basically, when a developer or any newcomer or any person try to implement a feature, he should open a Kubernetes enhancement proposal. So he talks about the need for that feature. Then it comes the work using using code, etc. So this is CAP is under the SIG of PM, which is project management. If you want to help improve CAPs, which are mainly README files, including all the necessary features of that global feature. So then I would talk about contributing from my experience. For me, I started very small, and by small I mean trying to introduce and ask questions whenever you can. The Kubernetes community are very friendly, so you should help them so they can help you. By helping them, I mean, of course, introducing yourself, also which part you are interested to contribute in, and what the documentation that you have read, and what problem that you are facing. Also, I'm talking about docs again, but this time you write it. Kubernetes contributor could be a contributor that is pushing documentation, also could be pushing code, etc. So by asking for help when what are the problems that you have faced, you could like collect many information that aren't documented there, and you could document them. That's already called contribution. So, or by just scratch an itch, that means if you have a feature, just implement it, or you just find a bug, fix it. That means that you should like use the latest version that aren't stable enough. Test them and see what are the bugs that you have encountered, and then push any fix. Also, the fix could be from you and other contributors. That means that you could ask for help, so they could push commit changes along with you. Also, it could be smaller things like code isn't clear. I have faced that a lot. Especially in the CKPI machinery. For example, code isn't commented well, so you just try to understand each line what it does, and then try to comment each function, its behavior, etc. Also, the script doesn't work on your OS, on your operating system. Just fix the script. That means there are many parse scripts under the Kubernetes repo, whether for just starting your local environment or just for doing flaky tests. So Kubernetes code base is generally in GitHub. So we use labels. We use labels a lot. For people that are a newcomer, you can find labels like good first issue or help wanted. Good first issue are very good issues that could be assigned for newcomers. Also, mentorship is available. That means if you have any obstacles or any difficulties, you could just reach out to some members or owners in Kubernetes Slack, and they will absolutely mentor you. Also, we have labels for SIGs and kinds. That means when a bug is reported already as an issue in GitHub, you probably, or in most cases, you will find labels attached. Like, for example, this bug or issue is related to SIG scheduling or SIG API machinery. If it's a bug already, so it's marked as kind bug, kind documentation, and kind feature for KEPs. All right. As there are many meetings, there are also roadmap plannings. That means this is, I think, the planning of SIG storage. Yeah, it's SIG storage. So they have like the roadmap planning to assign each people or each contributor on what he will be working for that sprint, let's say. And generally, there are many roadmaps for SIG release, which is the SIG that shape Kubernetes. Also, by talking about the roles that are assigned to SIG release, this is the roles. There is the release team lead, enhancement, CI signal, test infra, bug triage, etc. All these have its own documentation. So if you just want to shadow position in SIG release, just go ahead. And that's, of course, before beginning the release of Kubernetes. So the main point of being contributor is to ask questions. Do not be ashamed to ask many questions, even if you think it's a useless question. Look at what people are working on and offer to help on subtasks. There are many subtasks in one task in GitHub issues. Also, there are factor and write test and help fix flakes. That's, for example, for test infra. There is Slack channel which is test infra. You could like go there and see how you could help people there by fixing their flaky test or anything. This is Tim Hocken. He's talking about refactoring codes that is not enough clear for many new contributors and newcomers. Refactoring code is one of the major steps that contributors should do, because it's easy and could be like mentored by other contributors. So if you don't want to learn programming language and contribute, you just could contribute in Kubernetes using non-code contributions, like for example docs, also by issue triaging. That means assigning labels to issues and pull requests. Also by writing blog posts, community management, and moderation for Slack, Zoom, YouTube. For Slack, for example, we don't have a lot of people that moderating Slack in the EMEA region. So we are looking really for people to moderate. Just ask for it. Also organizing events and note taking. By note taking, I mean when you go to Zoom meeting with SIG, you could like note everything that has been said already in the meeting and publish it in a Google Doc, which is very useful for people that haven't joined yet for the meeting. Also by code reviewing, to understand, Kubernetes have a big code base, a huge code base, so you will not be able to understand a function or a feature or even slightly bit of code very simple. So you should start by reading code and reading code review, people that have reviewed other PRs. That's useful to understand the why behind decision. Also make notes about what you learn. I have did that a lot and it helped me using like I don't know, there is like project that could like store every note or everything that you have did. I forget its name. Incorporate into docs, review other codes. So the question here, when found what to work on and created a PR, then what? Actually, we'll meet the Kubernetes CI robot, which is responsible for closing PRs, closing issues, merging it, etc. This robot has like predefined content. First of all, you should like sign the contribution license agreement, CLA. You could sign it as an individual or corporate. That's based on your work in Kubernetes community. If PR is opened and the CNCF CLI is not signed, we could not merge that PR. You should sign it. Then the stage of the code review. Basically, the owner's file. There should be like 2 steps to get your PR merged. You should like let people from reviewers. They should put LGTM, which looks good for me. And the people in the approver section, they should put the comment /approve so they can merge, or Kubernetes CI robot can merge your PR. Okay. Also, the pod could suggest reviewers, which is very helpful for new people. By typing /cc the name of the person that you want to request review from. Also /assign, it's adds an assignee, and he should take a look and review your PR. Basically, when you open a PR, there are like a tool which is known as Kubernator. It shows you the workflow, or it shows you the reviewee person, how much he has PR to review. So when, for example, the PR didn't merge it, or the person didn't take a look at your PR very soon, you should respect that, because he have a lot of PRs to review. Also, the Kubernetes CI robot triggers some jobs that are for testing your PR. If you remember already, your PR will trigger, the Kubernetes CI robot will trigger jobs for you. If not, you should have the OK to test command from a member to retest your failed test, whether they are flaky or not. Just type /retest, and you can specify the test that you want to do by typing /test with Kubernetes verify. Okay. Many people they opened their first PR and then they just didn't show up. Why? You should really understand why your PR hasn't merged, and that could be helpful from the output that could be generated from the jobs that has been already triggered. Once your PR get merged, then you are a contributor. And I hope that you will keep the consistency to contribute to Kubernetes or any CNCF project. So, talking about the contributor ladder, we have the non-member contributors. Then, by contributing a little bit in sub-project or many different sub-projects, you could ask for Kubernetes org membership. That Kubernetes org membership should be like, you should have 2 sponsors from 2 different companies, and you should open an issue in the Kubernetes org repository asking for the member organization request. Once it get merged, you are a member. If you had historically by reviewing PRs of other people or commenting, you could be a reviewer. Also, you could be a approver if you are highly available for many other contributors to help them, review with them their code, etc. If you are an owner, that's how to say that should be like due to your responsibility and leadership in the community, which should be proven with time. For the mentorship opportunities, as a Kubernetes community, we have meet our contributors. It happens every Wednesday of each month, first Wednesday of each month. We have Slack channel, meet up our contributors. and we have group mentoring. They are happening already. If you want to join, there is like working group Kubernetes Infra. Bart is fellow from a company that is working on doing onboarding to newcomers. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions for me or for the slides that Dan did, please feel free to ask. Evan in France.
You know, I thought maybe both of us could sit up and just answer questions.
Yeah, sure.
Did you have a question?
I'm going to talk about CKA.
Oh, great, you do it, and then I'll do that.
By the way, I'm very sure that most of you are ashamed to ask questions. Please, if you would like to know more, just reach out in Kubernetes Slack for any SIG that you are interested to involve in. Just type SIGs of Kubernetes and you'll find all the lists in the table. Also, feel free to reach out to me personally. My name is Enswade in Kubernetes Slack. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Ahmed Hosni. This is going to be a bit quick. So, first of all, who has passed the CKA exam in the room? Yeah. I got it. So, Dan, did you get your certification?
No, it's one of my goals.
Yeah, you should take it. All right, so I'm gonna take you through my journey, how I started preparing to the CKA, and how I attended KubeCon, and how I met that part of my day-to-day work here in Vistaprint, and I'll talk about other stuff just to get you a clear path rather than going lost through the myth and tons of Medium articles and those stuff you purchase on the internet, and they're not really helpful. So here a little bit about me. I'm father of two. I'm a technology manager at Vistaprint, and I'm the developer's best friend, and I'm a professional conference goer. Also, I'm an open source contributor. I used to be in the Gerrit code review on the Tulip, PLM, bunch of open source projects, GDB, stuff like that. It was my job at ST Microelectronics. Also, I'm a teacher at EHEC Carthage. I teach them blockchain, distributed ledger technology, cryptocurrency, bitcoins. I reached $10,000 last Saturday. Also, I'm the organizer of Tunis Jenkins meetup, who's going to be part of the CDF, which is a sub-project of the Linux Foundation, similar to what I was CNCF and other sub-projects. We'll hold a meetup here about serverless Jenkins, which is by the end of the day running on top of Kubernetes. So in 2 weeks, we'll be gathering again. And you can find me on Twitter. Okay, so our office 2 years ago looked like this. Everyone was into the hype of microservices. Let's do microservices. But we weren't so ready for that. And some of them said, hi, I told you, he's not mature enough for it. We should have bought for him a model. So there was some voices putting us down on moving to microservices. And I do a lot of developer experience. I help developers to be comfortable and to be happy at some moment. So A lot of them are doing Docker, but in their own fashion and their own style, and it's hard to get everyone converged to a standard. And it gave me a lot of hard time back in days, especially for doing Microsoft containers. You can imagine. So I said, okay, I need to go to KubeCon anyway. I bring some knowledge from there. I meet some cool guys there, and we'll figure out how to do things in a clean way. I was in that keynote. This is Dan speaking in Copenhagen 2 years ago, and it was like a show and amazing. So then I said, probably this is the right place. Let's take the opportunity and meet everyone I can speak to. Finished at the KubeCon, I said, now I got the voucher. Part of my trip to Copenhagen, I need to get certified. And I don't know if you got folks in your team that are smarter than you, and probably if you're a team lead or their manager, I put some pressure on you. If you're into dogfooding or leading by example, you need to succeed on the exam. You can't tell someone, hey, go take your CK, and you can't take that exam or nail it. So I need really to be successful. So these are some exam details. I signed the DNA. I won't tell you the questions. Don't expect that from me. However, this exam is like an online proctorate. You can do it remotely. Like, just you need a reliable internet connection, a Chrome browser, and a small plugin, and you'll be all set. It also favors practice over theory, so it's 3 hours exam with 24 tasks. You need 74% to be to pass that exam. You can seek help, but cheating is out of bound. Like, they let you go to the documentation Kubernetes.io. You can look for whatever you want, but don't do it. We'll run out of time. The CK exam costs like $300, and if you can get the bundle, it's $499. But I've seen a lot of discount during like Black Friday and those during the holiday season. You can get them for even half the price sometimes. So the cluster in the exam would look like this. There are 6 clusters, and a subset of exam questions are done on one of those clusters. So you better not jump into questions to minimize the context switching. On the other hand, if you are really comfortable, you can take the hardest one and then get back to those. It's a strategy that you need to build, but you better get comfortable with some environment anyway. Curriculum, this is for D1.15. They change the curriculum every 3 months. So like 50% about core concept, 80% about config, 20% about pod design, 50% about services and networking, 10% about multi-container pods, and 8% about observability, and 8% about persisting states. So now this is my story, how I prepared. Okay. Who likes YAML files? I don't like them. It's good, but if it's one single file, if you get thousands of files, then it becomes a nightmare. So, you know, I don't think it's funny if you're gonna learn which API version for each kind, and then whether it's V1 beta or V1 or whatever. So I felt like it's gonna be too hard for me if I'm gonna learn how to write a whole YAML file for doing a complete task on Kubernetes. And then I said, there might be another way to do that, and less like, more accessible, let's say. I went to Kubernetes.io and said, okay, Kubernetes.io is brought by developer for developers. So these people would be doing documentation right, which is 100% true, but it's like too much, really too much. Kubernetes everywhere. So if you're preparing, it's gonna takes you like months until you cover the whole of them. You get really familiar with every line on every YAML file. So I said, that's gonna take me a lot of time. Let's change the strategy. Okay, I met Kelsey Hightower in Copenhagen. He's a brilliant guy, funny guy, a Googler. So I said, let's do it the Googler way. He's my guy, probably he got a good way. So Kelsey has something called Kubernetes the Highway. And it's mainly a Git repo where you can build your cluster from scratch on top of GCP. and without using a style or scripts or whatever, those kubespray, kubedm, or so. I read it, and I'm an AWS guy, essentially, so it was not very funny to get from getting like those load balancers on AWS ready and give me other struggles that are out of the Kubernetes topic where I need to be successful. So I said, probably it's too early. This is Kelsey in Copenhagen again, and he gave an amazing talk about how we deal with open source and other projects. So Kubernetes the hard way is about installing client tools, how to bootstrap your SSL certificate through CFSSL, how you provision compute resources, and then how to generate Kubernetes config files for authentication, data encryption, HCP cluster, and then how to do the control plan, the worker nodes, establish the configuration for remote access, and then provisioning pod networks, routes, the applicable stuff that Dan was talking about earlier. That you're gonna do that somehow, and you deploy the DNS cluster down and do some smoke testing. After doing Kubernetes the hard way, you would see Kubernetes like this. This Kubernetes, but you would understand every internal piece of it. It's like you understand the beast from internal component, you see how the machine is behaving. That's okay, but I said, probably I need to get back to some theory. So I went back to my Kubernetes fundamentals course from Linux Foundation, which is a step-by-step guide with labs and getting you from zero to hero the easy way rather than doing Kelsey's the hard way. So I got back, I did the entire labs. I felt really comfortable, and then I got back to Kubernetes the hard way, and then it's a whole other version to that lab. I can do it like my eyes are closed after internalizing the concept behind Kubernetes. So my 2 cents for you: give yourself some time to learn. You can start in this order. Use Kubernetes, get to know what we can do with it. Start with Managed if you want. GKE, EKS. That's very easy to provision and start playing with Kubernetes. And then you might want to create your own Kubernetes cluster. You can use any helper like kubedm, kubespray, or whatever. After that, if you are really comfortable, you can try Kubernetes the hard way, and then redo it as much as you can. Understand it, internalize it. Please don't do copy-paste. That works for you if you do copy-paste. It's cluster up and running, and you won't get very comfortable during the exam. And then if you want to check if you're ready for the exam, look through all the Kubernetes.io documents. If you still feel not overwhelmed by the amount of new things, then probably it should be a good time to give it a go. Now this is like my tweak or whatever to get successful. I'm pretty sure you found this in Medium in like dozens of articles, but it's really helpful. Just use autocompletion. I know Neil doesn't like it, and he passed CKA without autocompletion. It's his way of doing it. I prefer autocompletion. Double tab is fantastic. Use aliases as much as you can. If you want to put aliases to the whole Kubernetes kubectl commands, lose like 5 minutes and you get them during the exam. Kubectl edit would help you to edit resources and save time running kubectl apply right after. And this is the most important one. Make sure you know what error looks like when your YAML is incorrect. Kubectl explain is a good tool for that. And I really recommend you to go to a pretty old blog post from Joe Beda, but it's kind of pro tools to how you can create or bootstrap YAML files for kind or Kubernetes objects in one single command kubectl, like kubectl run nginx --image OYAML moment run, and you get the YAML for a deployment. You can do the same for a pod or for a service. So this helps you to craft a YAML file, and then you just edit it and add whatever is asked. You've been asked to achieve through the exam. Day of the test. Calm down. Remember, you get a free retake if anything goes wrong. Even if you fail, the first attempt provides you with the opportunity to understand the exam form and draw a conclusion before the second approach. By the way, I failed the first time. I ran out of time and didn't meet the score for passing. Have your ID ready, passport and room prepared, no electronic, anything in your desk or behind you. If the test times out or the window is freezing, or don't panic, just relax. The test is still there, and a couple of minutes, the page will refresh, and the proctor is really the true timekeeper. It happened to me, it happened to Nail as well, and the environment is there. Don't worry if you face this scenario. Time is a big factor. If you're spending more than 7 minutes on a question that's worth like 1% or 2%, then probably you're losing your time. You should move to the next question. You won't finish otherwise. A few days later, you receive an email. You say, hey, congratulations, you got your certification. Signed by Dan, by the way. My final thoughts. So this is like my really, really inner thoughts. I love the hands-on practical problem solving from the exam. Reminds me of those Red Hat way of doing, even though I'm not very fan of certification as a business, but I like the scenario. Doing all the tasks on Kubernetes.io was very helpful during the exam, and even for my day-to-day work, I do Postgres. I just copy-paste YAML to do I like cluster for Postgres. I get it right from there. I don't need to look outside the Kubernetes. Read Kubernetes in Action by Marco Luxa. It's a nice book. This is really like my advice for developers. Certification proves only that you have good short-term memory. Nothing can substitute experience. You really need to practice Kubernetes. And then, as Nail was talking, join the Kubernetes community, meet users, contributors, and the culture they've built together. That's all for me. I wish you have a great journey towards the CKI. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Can I just join you up here? Do you want to just stay for a little while and the three of us can answer some questions? Thanks. So, first of all, congratulations on becoming a CKA. That's fantastic. I do have just two comments on that, which I would, you mentioned them both, but I just want to really emphasize. The first one is, what do you call the person who graduates from medical school with the very lowest grades? Doctor. Yeah. And so I want to emphasize that nobody gets a perfect score on the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. That what you're trying to do is to demonstrate that you have this expertise. And so a really important skill is to keep track of how long you're spending on a question. And if it's too hard or you've got stuck, just skip. You really can switch between the questions dynamically, and then maybe you'll have time to come back to it. But you absolutely can pass the exam skipping one or even multiple questions. And then the other piece of feedback is the kubectl explain, that you really don't have the time to go to the Kubernetes website and read everything, but when you can get the answer right there on the command line, it's so much more positive. So I will say that one of my goals for 2020 is to become a CKA. And yeah, it's it's just about having the time commitment, but it's the same thing for all of you, where we all have day jobs. I've heard of a couple technology companies now in the US where when they hire someone new, they just say, go take a couple weeks and pass the CKA. And that's actually the way that they help the company get up to speed. Did we lose? Yeah, do you want to come back? And we could, the three of us could just answer some questions. So how long do we have? Are you 7:30 or?
Yeah,
20 minutes. So I think all of us are happy to answer any question about CNCF, Kubernetes, positives, negatives, KubeCon, our diversity scholarship program. You want to bring up some more topics?
Yeah, sure. And also for like contributing to the community, please feel free to ask. It's a good time. We're ready to ask. We have three of us. Yeah, sure.
Please.
You want me to?
Yeah.
As you like.
Loud though.
Okay, for contributing, you need just to know how to just to start, how to get started. I know you presented it, but more simpler way for us than to do
All right. Okay. So to start, you just need to ask, which is something good you just did.
this.
I invite you personally to Kubernetes Slack. Also, I invite you to take a look at the several SIGs that we have there. You could take a look at the roadmap, the things that we touch. You may want to be interested in SIG greater than another one. So you just like choose it, enter the room channel, and start to pick any issue that you would like, documentation, issue triaging, which is non-code things. I mean, just start and join us. It's like we are very friendly. You could answer any question at any time.
I would say there's 46, so it's hard to pick. And there's some that are not a good choice. There's SIG API machinery, which is this very sort of advanced how things fit in together. Great place to get involved eventually, but you wouldn't want to start there. But if you're not sure, I think the easiest place to get started is documentation. And they actually have a list of tasks that are marked a good first task. And they're things like inconsistencies or changes or other kinds of edits. And you can just get involved and just try and create a pull request. And then you're probably going to mess it up. There's something that's not going to go right. And then there's a Slack channel, and there's a lot of people who will be very happy to help you and walk through it. And then you can start doing more complicated ones. So it's not the only place to start, but if you're not sure, I think documentation is a really comfortable place.
I think there was a tweet from Tim Hawkins last week about getting more people helping on the SIG platform.
Working to Caritas.
Yeah, Caritas Infra. Sorry, just through tweet, start by a bunch of people presenting themselves. Hi, I'm doing this. I have this skill on Linux administration.
It was infra though, wasn't it? It was,
Yeah.
right.
And then they gathered everyone on a meeting to onboard them. So those onboarding meeting would easily be the path for you to get the access to contribution.
Let me just mention that one for a second. So Tim Hawkins is one of the real founders of Kubernetes. He's still at Google, and he's the co-lead of SIG networking. But he has a really interesting background where for the first few years, all of the Kubernetes continuous integration infrastructure ran on Google. And then 1 year ago, Google contributed $9 million worth of cloud credits to CNCF. And then we make those credits available back to the Kubernetes project. But what's pretty neat is that every single day, the Kubernetes project runs 10,000 Kubernetes continuous integration jobs. So anytime any of you make an edit to anything, if you're not yet a member of Kubernetes, and there's about 1,000 of them, then a member has to come in and say /test to say, yeah, this is a real thing. And then it runs all of these tests to make sure that you haven't broken things. And then every 2 days, we spin up 5,000 nodes. So it's not that many servers. It's more like 500 servers with 10 virtual machines on each one, and install a single Kubernetes cluster across the whole thing, and then check that there have not been any regressions in scalability, that nothing has changed that slows Kubernetes down. And so what's neat is that it used to only be Google engineers who could be involved in that. And part of this call is to say that no, anybody from around the world can get involved and learn that process, and then eventually come to control those machines. So it lets you operate at scale that it's very hard to do otherwise.
Thank you for organizing this meetup. I really enjoyed all the presentations. So would you guys recommend starting with the certificate and later contributing, or contributing then prepare for the certificate?
I'll give you my experience. Like I'm getting older. I come from embedded, like you. From embedded engineering, I did a lot of Java. Then I need to do like Kubernetes. So I started with CKA while my team are doing Kubernetes, and now I'm doing Kubernetes. So CKA is the path for me to do like Kubernetes in production. So that's not like a must. You can choose your own path and it will work for you, but I definitely recommend CKA anyway.
Hi, I was saying thank you all for this presentation. Thank you. Thank you a lot. I'm really proud of you. It's not very easy to have Tunisian company big projects, lots of projects. Thank you. I'm really going to take your advice on the Kubernetes administrator certification. Since you broke up the Java, you're working on the Java, and now Kubernetes. I have a specific question. Back at the company trying to shift to the cloud, and we have a Java ecosystem. So Java, we thought we were really free. We thought Java is that. And Java in the cloud is really flat. Now we've been checking practice. It's a new project, it's a open source project. Java based on the GraphQL. So what do you think about the practice project?
So this is like more on opinionated things and philosophy, but I talked to those like solution architects and people that design paths for people, for other developers. I say this is like not only about tools, and like GraalVM is something great, but if you want to go to Kubernetes, it just does not mean that you put things into containers and then bring them to Kubernetes. You really need to design things in a cloud native fashion. And that brings a set of design patterns that are different from whatever you used to fit on this huge GBus that is eager in terms of memory and CPUs, and then go to GVM tuning, and that's like old fashioned. We don't do that anymore. We leverage new patterns, and depends also on your business context, your developer experience. You need to educate developers first. But definitely, we are running Jenkins Cloudbase, which is a pure Java thing, and it's massively used by all the different developers and works like a charm on top of Kubernetes. So we proved that we run also Artifactory on top of JFrog Artifactory, which is a Java thing, on top of Kubernetes as well. So I think, regardless of the technology, you can make it. It just requires you to re-architect the thing rather than crafting a container for it without changing it and put it on Kubernetes. Kubernetes would be good at scheduling it for you, and I won't change your architecture. So it's your job to, and there's a lot in Kubernetes to use to do the things like that.
I would just add 2 points to that. One is that we get the question sometimes of, oh, I have this legacy monolithic Java application. What should I do? Do I need to rewrite the whole thing in order to be able to take advantage of Kubernetes and kind of modern cloud native? And the answer is sort of, but the first step is that you can actually take that legacy application and wrap it in a container and run it on Kubernetes. And in particular, there's a technology called stateful sets that you can pin that specific container to one server. Now you might say, oh, well, if I have this massive 8 GB application, it's this huge monolith that's pinned to one server, I haven't really gotten much advantage from Kubernetes, which is somewhat true. But then the idea is that you start shaving away portions of the functionality. So maybe you move the web server externally, and then maybe you move the database externally. And then eventually you're trying to re-architect your system into microservices. It's what's known as the strangler pattern, where it's like these parasitic vines that come down over a tree, and eventually they kill the tree in the middle, and the vines are still there. And so you can use that strangler pattern for the monolith. The one other thing that I would mention is that there's a very neat project out of Red Hat. It's open source, and it's called Quarkus. And so it's trying to create a very cloud native Java. Also the Eclipse Foundation, which is a another foundation like CNCF is doing a lot of work with cloud native Java right now. And so there are so many Java users out there that there are tons of effort to help it make it easier to tune your Java application, to shrink it down. And then the Quarkus part is neat because it has a really good development environment where as you're making changes, you instantly get it. You're not needing to reconvert it into bytecode again and again. And so I would encourage you to take a look at those.
Just one last question. Where can I find your presentation?
Find my what? Oh yeah, if you go to github.com/cncf/presentation, I have the Barcelona one, but the Minecraft one is not going to be up there for 3 more weeks until I actually give it. You're the only people who've seen this presentation without going to San Diego. And by the way, those presentations, they're all open source Creative Commons, so they're meant to be used for meetups like this. In fact, I have one from a couple years ago. I mentioned like shaving away, and it shows an ice sculptor. So you have a big block of ice, and then this woman is using a chainsaw and a pick, and I talk about the different technologies you can use along the way. So it would make a good talk, or you could edit it for your uses, or even just trying to convince people in your company about approaches you might want to take. So github.com/cncf/presentations. Sorry, and your guys?
Yeah, the other presentation, we put them online also. I would say in the Kubernetes, we have like a specific Kubernetes Cloud Native Tunisia project in GitHub. So we will just publish it there.
Yeah, it was very good, especially the CKA advice. I do appreciate you not putting the actual questions up there, but the advice was excellent.
Any other question?
Actually, yeah, good one. In terms of time commitment, it's going to take around, what is that like?
CKA, you mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I give you an honest answer. I took the voucher and I was overwhelmed by other things, and then it's gonna be expired because it's valid for 1 year. So I started 2 months before it gets expired, and then I thought I want to make it. So I said to my team, "Hey, let's gather 1 hour a day on a meeting room and work on that Linux Foundation course together." It's like kind of peer coding, working on tests if I'm unblocked. So a peer would unblock me. So I went through that for 1 month, I guess. We did that a bit more, and then I did it during Ramadan. Overnight, I was like 3 or 4 nights. I went through the entire when it's the hard way, redoing, and then I passed the exam. So I failed the first time. I got 68% because I ran out of time. I was struggling in questions that's worth 8%, but if I didn't do it, it took me 45 minutes, I would pass probably. So that's the advice from that. I got it, and then I succeeded with good grades. So I think you'll be fine with between 1 month and 2 months. That's if you're not doing Kubernetes in your job. Probably takes you shorter if you're a Kubernetes professional.
I will also mention something we're going to be rolling out. CNCF in 3 weeks at KubeCon is a new job board. And so we're going to have both a number of companies. It'll be free for companies to post on the board and free for people to apply for jobs. And then for the 500 CNCF members, their postings will be a little bit more prominent. But I will say that I do believe there's a lot of market opportunity for CKAs, including remote work as well. And so there's a real, I do feel really good about recommending that you take and pass the exam, because I think it is a way of proving that you have this expertise and differentiating yourself as you're applying for jobs.
Yeah. Is there any other question?
I think that for the case is working well with cloud provider like Google and Azure. Yes, but how we can use this, for example, use its own make post like
Yeah. I think there is a project named as K3S, which, yeah, other solution rather than.
Just create one system. But when I try to scale the application, it's
Okay, gotcha. So you are talking about Kubernetes cluster federation with other Kubernetes clusters, right? Yeah. I remember I saw a Medium article talking about multiple K3S clusters that are connecting to each other, including the CRD, customer source definition that could connect all the Kubernetes clusters with each others using Kubernetes federation. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but this is, as a concept, it exists in the Kubernetes.io website. You could read about that. And you just set up the K3S clusters, and you're fine.
Let me just mention two things to look at on Kubernetes.io. One of them is that there's a set of projects right now called Kubernetes Federation. And I'm speaking with a number of telephone companies, including Orange and Vodafone and others, where they want to have Kubernetes running in their base stations. And so the idea is they want to have one master Kubernetes cluster and then potentially thousands of edge devices that when they make a configuration change, it propagates out to all of the others. The initial version of Kubernetes Federation 2 years ago didn't work. And so then they restarted again and called it Kubernetes Federation V2 or KubeFed for short. And there's a lot of active work going on it, but it's definitely an area, it's not fully baked yet. It's very actively under development. The other area that I think is very promising, there's a lot of interest in, that's a little bit different, is called Cluster API. And this is how to configure and change your Kubernetes cluster using Kubernetes. And so people are, instead of needing to use Terraform, which I know you guys are big in, which is a great project, a lot of people, or instead of using KubeSpray or Kops or others, the idea is that you can connect directly to the AWS API or the Google API, or also a bare metal. So a packet, someone here mentioned, and then your own bare metal. And you can both configure new machines and update the OS, update the kubelet on it, and then the storage and the networking, and configure everything using the declarative Kubernetes style system. And so again, this is an area with a lot of innovation going on, a lot of people working on it, but is not fully baked yet. There's just but it's very promising. And both of those, each of those are Kubernetes. Those are 2 of the 40 Kubernetes SIGs. And so, if you wanted to get involved, you're very welcome to participate. They have mailing lists, they have Slack channels, they have their own GitHub repos. You can learn everything going on there. But those 2 would not be good starting points. They're more sort of advanced, and they don't fully work yet.
You guys mentioned contributing back. I think we forgot 2 things. So what's the license used in the code base, and what's up with the CLA? So why do you need the CLA?
I'll do that one. Yeah. So it's Apache 2.0, which is a very commercially friendly license. So the idea is that your company or your employer can take the whole Kubernetes software, can make any changes you want to it, and you don't need to contribute those changes back. Now, in reality, whenever you make a change, you're very likely wanting to contribute it back because you don't want to have to carry your own patches and keep maintaining that indefinitely. But Apache 2.0 is probably the most widespread license. The contributor license agreement, I find it a little annoying. Actually, CNCF runs the CLA bot that you use. We try to make it very easy. You can apply as an individual, you can have your employer apply, but very bluntly, Google likes the CLA bot. They think it gives them a little bit of extra protection. Particularly, they're concerned about patents, about other big companies or small companies suing them and saying, "Oh, you're violating our patents." And they think the CLA bot helps protect them from that. And so they required it for use for Kubernetes and also for gRPC. And in the big scheme of things, it adds a little bit of developer friction to new developers starting, but you take care of it and then it just gets out of the way.
So basically, which this is confusing. So I thought that it's the copyright of the code. This with the CLA now belongs to the Cloud Foundation.
No, so the CLA has that reputation because the GNU project used it that way, where you assign your copyright to the foundation. That's not the case for us. So everyone who contributes code to Kubernetes continues to own the copyright on that code. We don't ask for it. We don't want it. It's what the CLA says is you are committing to the 2.0 license, the Apache 2.0, that you understand the license and that you promise to follow it. Which, again, I would argue, well, anyone contributing code using the license is already making that commitment. It makes Google's lawyers feel better. But the other key thing I would emphasize is you're not giving any special privileges to Google. So they didn't ask for some sort of special benefit, and that was really key to get Microsoft and Google, and Microsoft and Amazon and SAP and Oracle and all of these other companies involved. That Google originally started the project, but they don't have any special privileges at this point.
So if I may, one question to Ahmed. So if I pass the what's my chances to get hired by Vistaprint?
That's the question.
You hire every CKA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I'll tell you how I hired Merit. I got his CV among the dozens of brilliant engineer CVs, and I saw at the end of the CV there links to his GitHub PRs. So I opened his PRs and saw his code, and I said, I need to meet that guy because I'm seeing how he's thinking through GitHub. So probably CKA is good, but your chances are high if you start contributing. If I see your PR, definitely I need you.
So those two things.
Yeah.
More than Kubernetes.
Yeah, you can contribute to it. I definitely like Prometheus as well, so which is in Golang, which is under the heart of the CNCF as well. You're not supposed to contribute only to Kubernetes. There are a dozen of other projects where you can contribute as well.
Again, with the CLA, can I check
Yeah, I could say that it's drilling outside. Can you say it real loud? Yeah, I mean, you can just send an email to cla@cncf.io and we'll help you with that. But on the other hand, you shouldn't need to. I mean, but if your employer wants you to, we're very happy to fix that for you. You can just say, deactivate my individual CLA because the corporate one will cover it now. And see, this was what I was complaining about before, where the CLA creates a little bit of developer friction. And thankfully, Kubernetes is a successful enough project that people are willing to deal with that. And it's just this annoying thing at the beginning. But what's nice about Prometheus and our other 40 projects is that you can just open the pull request on GitHub. You don't need to do anything else to contribute. Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you. Fluent D, for example, your T-shirt, they don't have a CLA, so it's a very good logging solution.
for the tool was speed there. I rented that tool, but sometimes I go to show my contribution, but now that's actually good.
Yeah, you're talking about DevStats, the tool to keep track of it. I'm actually, This is a good question. I'm pleased to say that I actually came up with the idea for DevStats 2.5 years ago and found the developer in Poland, whose name is Lucas Brglicki, who's done about 98% of the coding for it. And so every day, in fact, it's a pretty cool project because every hour it downloads every commit that's been made to every GitHub project. And then it throws away 99% of them and just keeps the CNCF projects and looks through and adds it into a Postgres database. And so over time it's evolved, but it's created this entire time series database. And so then it uses a different tool that was originally created for the Linux kernel called GitDM that lets you keep track of different maintainers. And so the thing that comes up a lot is you say, oh, you don't have my employer correct for that, or you still show me with my old employer. And we have a public record of every email address that's made any contribution to any CNCF project. And you can just go in and create a pull request and say, oh, I was working for this company until this date, and then this company, and then independent, so you don't have to do it to that degree. And then we attribute it to those companies. And I will say that it now has had a real impact where when you look at a company like VMware purchased a Kubernetes startup called Heptio that was founded by Craig McLuckie and Joe Beda, two of the original Kubernetes creators. And I don't think it was the main reason, but I think the fact that it helped VMware jump from being like the number 20th Kubernetes contributor to the number 3 contributor was a factor in them deciding to buy it for $550 million. And so I definitely, if you are making contributions, and I'll say that we don't care what kind of contributions. They can be documentation, they can be code, they can be test coverage, anything else. But we keep track of all of those. And just the DevStats itself is an open source project. And so if you find something that's wrong with it or something that you'd like to improve, or something we've seen a lot is people taking it and using it to keep track of their own internal source code and running analysis on it, you're very welcome to it. Oh, that's great. It's a little tricky to install, so congratulations that you.
It's not a charted, I think.
Now there's a Helm chart, exactly. And Lucas is pretty good about providing support for folks who want it. But it's been a very, very influential project. And so it's been fun. But it's one of those key things where the original idea for it was good and produced some useful data. And then once we had that, all of these other people got involved and said, oh, what I really need is a chart that shows this. And so being able to show things like when somebody creates a pull request in any of the 40 different Kubernetes SIGs, how long does it take to get a response? And then the steering committee, some of the leaders are able to look at it and say, oh, these SIGs need more attention. They're not being responsive enough. And then just over time, the tool's gotten more and more features about showing that kind of data. Show?
No. Any other question? Any other last question?
Can I ask a question?
One
Yeah.
last.
I have a last question. So we talked a lot about the good things about Kubernetes. Here's that said. Is there any concept of Kubernetes? I don't believe in the perfect system, so I'm sure there are some bad things about Kubernetes.
Yeah. Go ahead, what are some of the bad parts?
What should I keep in mind by using Kubernetes
Okay, as Kubernetes as a project or as a community?
as a tool?
As a tool,
Yeah.
okay. I don't know, maybe.
It's not really bad, but again, it's my own opinion, but it happens to me to get things done through an AWS Lambda that costs me nothing rather than building a fully fledged container, even though it's like a small tiny bit. Like the whole hassle behind the CI/CD to publish that container to registry and then to pull it in to get the deployment and whatever canary or kind of strategy you're doing. Just a Lambda in Node.js or Python and gets done in like less than 100 line of code. That's my developer DNA pushing me you can still do it easier, and I got 1 million for free. So it's trade-off. And I'm not saying Kubernetes is bad, but there are a bunch of other things that would help you do your job outside Kubernetes as well. You just need to pick the right tool for your situation. I got a question last year from Jihad. It's about running databases on top of Kubernetes. And we were arguing, like she said, we can't. I said, we could. It's how well we are, how good we are designing stateful sets to get those things running. So there's no absolute truth. It depends on really how you are doing. And we managed to run Postgres and it works like a charm on top of Kubernetes.
Oh, yeah, I would just say briefly on that, if you're familiar with Wikipedia, they run all of their PHP MediaWiki servers on Kubernetes, and it's very useful because they're stateless and they scale in and out. They're still running MySQL on bare metal today, and they can run it on Kubernetes. You absolutely can use stateful sets and do it. And then in particular, if you've run out beyond the capability of a single server, then I definitely encourage you to look at a project, a CNCF hosted project called Vitess. It actually originated with YouTube and was very, very widely used there. And so it's a way of sharding MySQL so that you can automatically share between a lot of different instances of it. And that works very well with Kubernetes. It's going to become the next project to graduate in CNCF in another week or so. But I think it remains the case that it's the stateless applications that get the biggest value from Kubernetes, and the stateful ones are both more effort to get working and reliably, and there's not as big an advantage versus running it on bare metal.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's still cupcakes and juice. Go home so fast.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh yeah.